This is Advent of Code 2020, day 21. This puzzle is called Allergen Assessment. So we've arrived at some sort of vacation island, and we don't really recognize the local language, but there's a bunch of foods that we'd like to pack for our trip, and we need to get a sense of whether the ingredients for these foods contain any allergens that we need to be concerned about. And so we can see that even though we don't recognize any of these ingredients, we tend to be able to understand what allergens these ingredients may contain. So we want to parse through these lists of foods and figure out which of the ingredients go with which of the allergens, and through that process of elimination, we want to ultimately find out how many foods or how many ingredients are there across these foods that do not contain an allergen. So in the case of this example, there are 5 ingredients appearing across these 4 foods that do not contain an allergen. It's these 4 right here, and then the SBZZF appears twice for a total of 5. The way I'm kind of thinking about this is, at least in terms of a process of elimination, is I'm noticing that these first 2 lines both apparently contain dairy. So if I were to find what's common between these 2 lines, I'll notice that the MX and the MX both appear, but then everything else is unique between the 2. So I feel like MX must be dairy. So then I can keep going and maybe try and narrow down which from these 2 lines is fish. So I can eliminate the MX from here and the MX from here. So we've got the SQ and the SB. So the only overlap in this first line and this last line is the SQ. And then the only line that contains soy is this one. And since we just decided that SQ was fish or contains fish, then by process of elimination, soy goes with the FVJKL. So knowing that, we could then go through and see what are the ingredients that are left over, sum them up, get to 5. That's kind of how I'm thinking about approaching this. The puzzle input, which is potentially in Maltese, contains quite a bit though, so we're not going to be able to eyeball it. We'll have to get the computer to do that for us. So I started sketching out a little bit of the code that I think will create a skeleton for this solution. So if I jump over to input here, you can see that I've already pasted this all in here. So I'm reading in that file. I'm splitting on new lines because each line is its own food item, which will contain both the ingredients and the potential allergens. So I take these food lines and I map over them to parse out 2 named capture groups. The first will be just all of the ingredients in a single string line, and then eventually I'll get an actual open paren character, the word contains, a space, and then a series of allergens, which can be made up of A through Z, and then they're separated by spaces. Actually, they're separated by spaces and commas. So there'll be a bunch of those. That's going to be a named capture group called allergens. So those 2 values will come out, and I guess just to help illustrate what I'm going for here, let's copy this example over. So this stuff that's going to be captured inside of ingredients is the beginning of the line. It's just some word, space, whatever we find, just characters, until we reach an ending space that's followed by an open parenthesis. So this bit right here matches right here. So everything here is going to end up in this first named capture for ingredients. Then we have contains, space, and then some number of allergens, which again is A through Z, commas and spaces, and then eventually a closing paren. So all of this right here is going to end up in this allergens named capture. So then I'm going to split apart the ingredients by spaces, which is the default argument to split. And then I'm going to split apart the allergens by the comma space, as you can see we have here. And then that's what I'm going to return, this tuple of ingredients and allergens for each item that we map over. So now given that, I'd like to take a peek and see if all this parsing actually works. So I'm going to pry in here and check out what we have in foods. So we'll go Ruby part 1, foods, contains a bunch of things. What about foods.first? Okay, foods.first.last. Yeah, so that's wheat and shellfish, and that gets matched with this big list here. Whoop. Yeah, that's a lot of things. Okay, so yeah, knowing that, I guess I'm curious to walk through and see if we can do anything like we did in the example here of saying, hey, here's an allergen. Show me all the places where the allergen shows up, and is there anything unique between those lists where that allergen shows up? But before I do that, I actually want to, I think, build up this data structure here, allergen to ingredient list. So I will foods each do, oops, and so I'll have ingredients and allergens that'll come out for each food, and I will say allergen to ingredient lists. We assign it to, oops, I misspelled allergens. And I guess allergens will be a list as well, so I'm going to have to map over each of these too. Oops. Okay. So I'd like to assign the allergen to some array, either the existing, either an empty array if nothing's in here yet, or the existing array with this particular ingredients list appended on. So we'll say that equals array allergen ingredient list allergen. So we'll look up the allergen, and either it'll correspond to an array or it'll be an empty array, and then we'll shuffle on the ingredients there. Okay. And I think that's right. If I say array of some array, yeah, we'll just get the array. If I say array of nil, we get an empty array. So I like that for this solution here, and I'll pop this onto a new line to make it maybe a little more readable. Maybe it just kind of looks like a weird cascade, but I'm hopeful that this will build things up here. So let's pry and get a sense of whether that worked. Ingredients. Did I call that the wrong thing? Ingredients. Oops, misspelled it. There we go. Try that again. Okay. What did I call that? Allergen to ingredient lists. Okay, nice. So given that, I can say wheat, give me that, and then give me the size. So that wheat shows up in 8 things. Actually, I'm kind of curious. Each key list. And then I'm going to print out guess the key and then the list.size. Oops. Why did that print out like that? Allergens each do print out the key and the list size. Didn't seem to do that though, it just returned the list. Oh, sure, because I didn't actually put a puts in here. There we go. Still wanting to return that whole thing, but wheat 8, shellfish 7, so on and so forth. Okay, so there's a lot of overlap between all these things. So then for me, the question is there a particular allergen that has overlap amongst its, 7, 8, 11 lists that it shows up in that would allow us to narrow it down? So to do that, we can start something like this. And for each of these, I'd like to know, I guess, puts out the key. And then I guess I want to take each list and I want to like reduce it down so that we do a bunch of like set differences or set overlaps. So what I'm thinking here is if one list contains ingredients A and B and another one contains B and C, then we find the unique one that's B. Of course, if this also contained A, then that doesn't get us very far, but if there's then another list that contains C and D and A, then we find A. I'm thinking something like that, and I wonder if you've got a list like this, can I assign that? So can I take these lists and reduce it down so that the accumulator and a given list, can we say the accumulator and the list? It's returned like that. Okay, that seemed to work. Let's take that then. And we'll pop back up here. Call this lists. We'll puts out key. And then we'll puts out this as an array. If I just puts out an array, is going to do a series of lines like that. So I'm going to actually call join it on commas like that, and call end. And let's see. So for wheat, we get all these things, so that's not narrowed down. For shellfish, peanuts, nuts, eggs. So eggs gets us one thing, and then we can eliminate KG-BZF from other places. Like we can eliminate it from dairy. So then dairy would end up as FLSSC. That narrows down soy, so on and so forth. Okay. So I don't want to, I guess, do this all by hand, or maybe I could could write a program to sort of iteratively pull those out, but you know, maybe I can fast track this a little bit. I think sometimes part of solving a puzzle is having the computer assist you, like when it assists you with updates that you don't want right now. Allowing the computer to assist you like it's done with this list, and then having some like human intervention like I'm about to do now, where I take those results and refine them a little bit, and then having the computer take over from there again. So I like eggs being this. So maybe I say, you know, eggs gets this value. So I'll create a hash here of allergens to ingredients. So then I can find all of the KGBZF, and I can replace that, or just remove it really. Okay, so then that narrows down dairy to be this value here. So then I can highlight this whole thing and again remove FLSSC, place it with nothing. All right, so then soy gets narrowed down to there. So then that DQBJJ only showed up down here, which means that both peanuts and nuts are narrowed down. Okay, and then there's that. So the ZC gets removed from here and here, and then, and here, okay. So then sesame becomes KP, shellfish becomes FPV, and then wheat becomes QP. All right. And lastly, add some missing commas, close that, give it a save, do some formatting. All right, we've got it. This is just yelling at us because it wants those to be single quotes. Rubocop can deal with that for now. So those are all of the allergens and the ingredients that contain those allergens. So then we just need to go through the ingredient lists that show up in each food line, remove the allergens, allergen containing foods gets dot values. So then foods each do or not even each do. I guess we want to some perhaps. And so we'll get the ingredients And we don't care about the allergens at this point. And so we'll say ingredients minus allergen containing foods dot size. We'll sum that up. And these will be our safe ingredient count. Oh, save. Whoops. Safe ingredient count right there. And then we'll print that out. Useless assignment. Oh, whoops. That's a subtraction. Okay. So this set operation here will remove from the ingredients all of the things that we determined contain allergens. And then the size of that will tell us how many times it shows up. We'll sum those all up, and that should be our answer. So let's give that a run. 1885. Okay. Does that give us a star? It does. All right. So we got our first gold star for the day. That's it for this part, and we will see you in the next video for part 2.